Hello, today we're going to create our first Web DynPro for ABAP. For those of you who watched my last session on how to install Netweaver, you want to make sure that you do start up your management console. Make sure that's green, and then we can go into our SAP logon and double click on our connection, sign in. Once we're in, the first transaction we're going to go to is SE80. This will bring us to the ABAP development workbench. Now that we're here, we're going to drop down, and you can see we can choose packages, programs. We're going to find Web DynPro components and interfaces. Type in the name of the application we want to create. So I'll do Z for customer namespace, and then web prof, and then underscore demo. So click enter, and it's going to notify me that this object does not exist. And yes, we do want to create this object. We can create a description. We'll just say YouTube demo and continue. So it's automatically going to create a default window name and default view name for us. If you have problems creating this component and you're using the Netweaver trial edition, make sure you use BC user, and we're going to create a custom package, Z demo. You could also do local object since we're not going to productionize this. Maybe I have to do local object. There we go. Alright, so we created our new object, and you can see that we have a component controller, a component interface, we have the main view, and also a new window with the same name as our object. So just kind of give you the quick tour. In the views, double click on the main view. If we click on show hide layout preview, you'll see this is where we build the UI interface. We do have a service that's not available, but I'll show you how we can activate that. I'm going to click this button here, and that creates a new session. Once we create this new session, I'm going to go to SICF. That's where we manage SAP services. So you think that would be activated by default since we use it so often, but that's not the case. That's how SAP consultants get paid. Alright, so once we're in here, I'm going to execute, drop down my default host, go under SAP. You can see the path right here that I'm following, SAP, BC, and WDBD. So going all the way down to the bottom, there's the service. You can see it's not activated because it's grayed out. Right click on it, activate service, yes. Alright, that service is activated, so let's give it a try again. Alright, so we have a bit of icons to activate. Alright, a good 5-10 minutes later and we're ready to roll. So I did get this to work. What I had to do is go into the service SICF and activate all of the services that you saw there in the air. The most important one was under public BC Web DynPro View Designer. And if you ever notice that you don't have the ability to change anything, do make sure that you are in change view. If you're in display view, you just click the little pencil here and it will switch you over to change view. So as you can see here, this is our UI designer, so we can drag and drop these different elements over into our work area here. So let's say if we want to add a caption, just drag that over. Of course, it's great UI. I don't work for SAP, so that's why I'm not editing this out of the video, but sometimes what I do is just go insert element here. So I right click on the root element container, insert element, I'm going to create an ID. We'll create this my label, and this is of course a label. So we have the ID and type. Click yes, the check mark there. Alright, so we have a label. You can see this little element hidden there. So it wants to know what it's a label for. And it will not let you activate this program unless you're telling it what the label for is. And it does want the text for this label. So we'll say the text will be name, and then click off that and you'll see The name will appear here after a little bit of compiling by SAP. And we're going to make our label for a text edit, or an input field. Let's do an input field. So I right click on root UI element container, insert element. This time I'm going to call it my input field. Drop down, input field. Alright, so there's our input field. And we're now going to go back into our label element, and we're going to drop down here, and we're going to select my input field. So we know that the label is for my input field. Alright, so there we go. We have our name and our label. Now let's make this a little nicer to look at. And we're going to build under layout. You see we have different layout elements. Let's do a page header. So I'm going to right click again on my root element container, insert, we'll say my header. It's a type page header. There we go. So we have our header. Now you can see that the header is underneath my label and input field, and I want to move that up. So I can do that here. Sometimes that can create some serious problems, so I typically do it this way. And if I hold on to it and I let go on the input or on my label, it will go above that element. So I let go, and there it is. Another way to do it, if you're not comfortable with the dragging over here, you can right click and say move down, right click and move up. That's the safest way to do it for sure. So we can see now we're in the new header element, and we do not have a title, so in here we'll insert a title. We'll say there we go. So there we have our demo, and now we'll actually want to create a little space underneath this header and the UI elements. So if we go to if you go to the cell design, you have the you can do left pad and right pad, but there's nothing really to give us any vertical pad. So what I usually do is I go in, it's a little trick, I go insert element, my space, and what we're going to build is a transparent container. So I build that, I move that up under the header, right? And then I just want to make sure we'll make sure it's 10 pixels. So there we go. So that added a little space between our header and our field, so it looks a little bit nicer. So we have our label and our name. Now we've only been playing in the view so far, so what we'll want to do is we'll want to go and actually have a place to store the user's input. And where we do that in Web DynPro is in the component controller, in the context node. So I'm going to save this before I leave the view, because if I leave the view and go out and I don't save, I'll lose all these changes here. So you will notice that we have the tabs up top here, and I'm in the layout tab currently, but there is a context node tab, and so I can build context here, but I typically like to do it if I'm going to use the same information in another view. We're going to want to build the context in the component controller as like the parent of the context. So we can go back to the component controller, and again all views can use this context here, and I right click on the context. I'm going to create a node. You can view a node as kind of like a holder of multiple attributes. So the node is going to be called, we'll just call it node for now. And we can leave everything as default. You can actually have it as use a dictionary structure. So if you have a structure you have in SAP that you want to mimic, you can actually pull in all of the fields that are part of that structure without creating them manually. So if you do want to do that, that's where we'll do this. We'll actually maybe do that in a future lesson. We're going to use the cardinality in the selection as 1 to 1, 0 to 1. Obviously if you're going to want to do a table, you'd actually have it 0 to n, 1 to n. So we're going to click OK, and we should have our node. Alright, we have our node. Now we have that, we're going to create an attribute, and we're going to use our name attribute. We'll call it name, and it's just going to be a type string. Alright, so we'll click OK. You can use input helps on these attributes. You can have default values. If we did want to go back and edit this type, we just right click and change, and you can see that we can add a default value. And we can make it read only. Alright, so we're going to save this, and we're going to go back to our view. Again, you want to save before going back to your view, because you could lose everything, but it does prompt you. So we're back to our view, and now we're going to look at the context of our view. Notice they are two different contexts, and it's still blank. Well, that's because we didn't tell this specific view that we do want to inherit the context node that we just built in the component controller. So we're going to drag and drop this, and this does work. I've used it multiple times. Alright, so now if we go back to our layout, we can actually reference this node. So I'm going to save here, go back into our layout, and now I'm going to click on this input box, and I'm going to tell it that it has the value of the node we just selected. So I'm going to click this little binding button here, and you can see that I can go on here and select this attribute. Now if we didn't do that binding in the context here, we wouldn't have be able to select this here. We would not see it. So alright, that's now bound, and you can it even tells you right here. So we're going to save this, and let's check our work. Now notice we have no really way to test this application yet. I just right clicked it, I don't know why it's thinking. So what we want to do is create, and we'll want to go down to Web DynPro application. It does not create that for you by default. So we want to right click on the top level of our object and create an application. So let that think. Here's our application name. Again, we can use a description. This is separate than the component description. This is our application description. Alright, our application's created. Well, it's not actually created yet. We do have to save this. So I'm going to leave everything as default. You'll see here's provided a URL where we can actually test our application. So there's multiple ways we can test this application. So I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to save. Notice there's no application here yet, but after I save, it will appear down here. That's how you know you created your application. Again, we'll use the local object. Alright. Now that I have that application here, I can drop down, and if I right click, I can test that. Before I want to do that, I want to make sure all these are activated. The little blue means it's not activated. So how I can do that, I can actually activate all these at once. But the first thing I want to do is double click on the parent here, and then click activate. Then I don't have to select those individually. So you can see it's grabbing all of these. It's already pre-highlighted because I grabbed the parent. I click OK. Alright, our object is activated. Now I can right click and test. Just in case you missed the activation, it was right click and activate. That's all activated, so now right click and test. Get this little pop-up, a little GUI security. I'm going to click always allow. Okay. So if you notice, I right-clicked and test, and it's actually going to the URL that I copied earlier. But let's say you want to email this application to another SAP user to have them test. You could just send them this link. They don't have to go into the into Web DynPro. Alright, the reason I'm getting this error is because I do not have a valid URL. So what we have to do, if you are using the Netweaver trial, you're going to want to go into User, SAP, NSP, System, and Profile, and open up this NSP file here. You can just open it up with Notepad, and I added a custom line here. And so this line parameter is ICM/host name full, and I have that set to mynetweaver.com, so that's a valid URL. And now if you go into your Windows host file and you do the same there, Before I just had SAP PC, but it needed the .com, so I set my local host to my.netweaver.com, matching the parameter in this file. And now you'll see when I go in here and test our application, just right click test, it's actually going to pull up that URL there, my.netweaver.com. So that fixed my error there. So I'm logging in again, and we have our demo. So we have our label and our field and our header. Perfect. Alright, so let's see if we can add some more to this. So I'm going to minimize this, go back to our program, and let's create a new view. So I'm going to right click here and create a welcome page view. It's a new page. So we're in the welcome view now. And what we're going to do here is add a little text view. So right click up here, insert element, just say welcome text. And we'll say welcome to our web page. Save that. And we're going to personalize that. So we're going to add another field. Let's add another text view. So insert name text, and will also be a text view. And we're going to have this one match the value of the string in the context. But remember, before we can access the context from the component controller, we have to drag that over here. So we're going to drag this node over to the context. There we go. So now this welcome iView can inherits the components controller context node. Go back to our layout, select our name text, and we're going to say text equals the value of the name. So you can see that right there. Cool. And what we'll do on this welcome text, we're going to add a little pad on the right, so a little R padding. So I give us a little space on the right so they aren't, we have a little space there. Perfect. Alright, so we'll save that. We'll see our welcome page there. We'll go back to the main view, and we're going to create a button. So we'll go right click, insert, and we'll create a submit button. Type button. Alright, and we'll call it submit. That's our text. Now we're going to create inbound plugs and outbound plugs, and what these plugs do is actually tell SAP where we're coming and going. So if for this page we want, when the user clicks submit, we want to go to the welcome page, so we'd be going outbound, so we create an outbound plug. So we'll say for this plug, go to welcome. So we'll click save. So it's an outbound plug from the main view. Now we're going to go to the welcome page, and we're going to create an inbound plug. So we're going to call this in from main. So we'll save that. So now we have two plugs. Now under Windows is where you kind of manage all your views. So if we double click on this, our single window, when we drop down the window structure, you'll see we'll have the main view. That's just brought there by default. So we have to drag our welcome view over here as well. Alright, so we have both our views. Now we kind of connect the dots of where the user can, how the user jumps back and forth between these pages. So we're actually going to jump from the outbound plug to the inbound plug. So we're going to drag the red to the welcome page inbound plug. So we're leaving the red, we're leaving the main page to the welcome page. So outbound to inbound. Kind of a rule of thumb is you always drag red to blue. So this is kind of where people start pulling their hair with Web DynPro, but after you do it for a little bit, it makes a little more sense. So I'm going to say OK. So again, what we just did is we dragged the welcome view into the window structure, and then we dragged the outbound plug of the main view to the inbound plug of the welcome view. Alright, now that we have that, we're going to make sure it's saved. Go back to our main view, and we're going to click on our submit button, and we're going to say on action. So on actions, for those of you who know HTML and JavaScript, so you have an on click, on submit, on change action in HTML. Well, this on action is very similar to that. So what we're going to do is when the user clicks submit, is we're going to call a certain outbound plug, and so we just create an outbound plug in this view. So we're going to select the only one we have. So we're going to submit that. We'll just call this on action go to welcome. See if we can get away with the same name. Cool, we can. So we'll save that. And now we just created an action, so you can see on the actions tab we have a new go to welcome action. If we double click this, it will take us to the methods tab, and you can see we have this Web DynPro event go to welcome plugin. So it's saying go to the welcome page. Alright, so save that. Hopefully that didn't overwhelm anyone. And we're going to activate and test it. So I'll double click on my parent, do activate. Let's give this a test. Right click on our application, test, log in again. Alright, so write my name, Brandon, submit. It's going to think for a bit because it's our first time running this. And then we have welcome to our web page, Brandon. So cool. We just wrote our first ABAP Web DynPro.